This is where we are. Where do we go from here? When the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. addressed the Southern Christian Leadership Conference in 1967, he depicted a vast system of racial and economic oppression. He explained the rate of infant mortality among Negroes is double that of whites, and there are twice as many Negroes dying in Vietnam as whites, in proportion to their size in the population. This is where we are. Where do we go from here? Today, the statistics we hear are not of Vietnam, but of deaths by COVID. For example, yesterday, The Guardian reported that in St. Louis, where 45% of the population of the city is African American, 64% of COVID cases are African American. This is where we are. Where do we go from here? For King, the next step was to demand the recognition of the worth and dignity of African Americans. He insisted we must stand up amidst a system that still oppresses us and develop an unassailable and majestic sense of values. Compassionate to the experience of personal suffering, King also pointed again and again to systems of oppression. Faced with systems that would degrade and oppress persons, King called for the development of an unassailable and majestic sense of values. Let's break that down. Unassailable means to be unable to be attacked, questioned, or defeated. To be unassailable is to be beyond doubt, inviolable, untouchable. King then pairs this term of certainty with the more subjective aesthetic adjective, majestic, a term conveying a sense of compelling wonder. What then might it mean to develop an unassailable and majestic sense of values? King is teaching us here. Faced with the ugliness and sheer momentum of systems of oppression, you need a counterweight that will withstand all of the hate, denial, and the relentless push for normalcy to perpetuate injustice. 60 plus years later, we are not where King was when he gave his speech in 1967. In many ways, we are in a singular time in human history. No other generation has endured this particular configuration of crisis. History has certainly seen widespread disruption through global war as well as viral pandemic before. But we have not seen this kind of global disruption and pandemic in a digital age, nor in the age of Trump with its anti-science, anti-government currents. And yet, we can identify a line of consistency between these crises, what W.E.B. Du Bois called the color line more than 100 years ago. Disparities of race emerge in the crisis of the virus, signs of long-standing inequalities in healthcare access. If we are paying attention to how deadly this inequity is, how can we simply hope for a return to normal? Maybe normal wasn't actually working out so well for many folks. Some folks are referring to this as a time of the great pause. Here, in this unanticipated interruption to life as normal, we have a chance to pause and to reflect on the ways we have been living, on the world we have created. In a Medium article entitled, "Prepare for the Ultimate Gaslighting," New York City writer-director Julio Vincent Gambuta cautions against all the money and the media that will seek to make you feel comfortable again. Gambudo does not deny the need for comfort following our crisis will be strong. But he wants us to take advantage of this great pause, to notice how we're feeling, to consider a different world. He writes, "What the crisis has given us is a once-in-a-lifetime chance to see ourselves and our country in the plainest of views. If we want to create a better country and a better world for our kids, and if we want to make sure we are even sustainable as a nation and as a democracy, we have to pay attention to how we feel right now. What if this crisis was not simply an experience to be endured until we return to our normal comfort? What if we took from this great pause a chance to reflect on the world we really want to live in and the world we could work to build? What if we took this time to notice and name an unassailable and majestic sense of values? For me, the list would begin with reason. Or you might also say science or even critical thinking. In a time of a viral pandemic, medically trained professionals, as well as the mechanical and medicinal tools of these healthcare workers, are all rooted in scientific processes that call for rigorous, careful thinking, rational processes. We only need to look at all the false information circulating, including this week's fiasco about the apparent suggestion to ingest cleaning products, to see the importance of the value of rational thinking. But reason alone is not enough. Too often our thinking becomes distorted by prejudices and fears. We need, therefore, a majestic and unassailable value that binds us to each other, even across difference. We need to value love. We need a love that recognizes the worth and dignity of every person, a love that sees the humanity in others. Such a love generates an ethic of service, of caring about others, beyond oneself and one's own, like the story we heard earlier about Mrs. Twiggly and her tree. And yet, in his speech, King cautions that love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power is the ability to effect change, to make things happen. When power and love work together, the result can be justice. Or as King says, power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. And justice at its best is power correcting everything that stands against love. And so I would add justice as a third unassailable and majestic value. Justice is a vision of the world in which people live in love, what King calls the beloved community. Reason, love, justice. These are the three unassailable and majestic values that I hold out for you to consider today. There are many more values to consider, and perhaps your list might be different. Perhaps, like me, you have even been experiencing increased conflict or uncertainty about your values. For example, as a student and a professor, I value personal responsibility, and I expect students to turn their work in on time. But given the enormous disruptions to students' lives, I am left wondering, what does it look like here to stand for love and seek justice in this situation? Such questions of values reminds us that we are living through a remaking of the world. Already our climate was in crisis, our political systems were deeply divided, and white supremacy was publicly resurging. And then the virus shattered all pretense of normal. This disruption gives us a chance to reconsider whether or not we really want to return to normal, or if we want something different for ourselves and for our shared world. We may still not know what tomorrow, next month, or the fall will bring, but knowing what unassailable values we do not doubt may help us to choose how to spend our time, attention, and resources. In all that we may choose to do in these coming weeks and months, may we act with intention, seeking out more than just comfort, more than just normal. Let us all use this great pause to notice what really matters and to direct our power to side with love. So may it be. Amen.